Hi, and welcome to CheeseCutter tutorial. My name is Carsten Berggren, Scar6 of Offense, and I have decided to make a tutorial about how to get around in CheeseCutter editor. So I'm not going into details about the values in the different tables. I'm just trying to give you an overview and a way to navigate around. So press escape, get away from the splash screen, and you have three areas. First we have the sequencer, where we have our notes and our tracks in order. Then we have the instrument area, and then we have all the lookup tables. All the lookup tables are sort of connected either by commands from your sequencer or your notes, or they are lookup tables from the instruments. But I'll try to give you a few examples. First of all, when you enter the editor first, it's completely blank. No sequences, no instruments, no nothing. The pre-entered values here, you should just leave them alone. They are sort of programmed into the player and used for something, so don't touch them. I do know what they are for, but I don't want to spend time on explaining that. So, first of all, we have sequence 0, 0 here, and we have a transpose value of A0. A0 means that you have zero, a lot of zeros here. You have no transpose right now. If I press F5, I go into this area and I can change the number to, let's say, 9F. That's -1 semitone. But A0 is the default no transpose for a start. Sorry for that jumping up and down. I'll fix that in a few seconds. Then we have the sequence number. That's 1 byte and 2 nibbles, and it's currently using the same sequence across all 3 channels, and we need to change that if we need to do something about this. And also you can see the sequence number up here saying where the tune or cursor is right now in your tune. So it's in sequence 0, but we know that already. So what you do is you just first you press F5 again, and then you enter some rows in your first sequence. I hold down Shift, press Enter, 1, 2. Every time you press Enter, you insert 16 blank rows, so you're ready to do some music. And if I press F2, the music starts, or rather the tune starts playing, but there's no sound, so of course it says nothing. This is my sequence null. Usually I keep this blank as it is now, and then this length, whatever length I put into it, the maximum is 64 rows. Right now it's 32, so I can have it on the screen for you. I use this sequence 0 as my template. When I started using CheeseCutter, I was told that this was a good idea, so I've just kept continuing doing that, and I think you should too, but it's your decision, of course. Then I press F5, go back into the track editor, editing here, and I say, well, this one is track 1, and this one over here is track 4, and this one should be, let's say, track 8, just to make some difference. I said 8. And when I move out of the sequence, it updates, and then you can see they are empty too, because all sequences are empty and null length by default. So I say Alt, hold down Alt and press C for copy, and then it asks which sequence do you want to copy from. And instead of pressing Shift Enter on every time I do a new blank sequence, then I just copy from my 0 sequence. So this way, when I press Tab, I just say Alt C, and I don't have to care about how long my standard sequence is in this tune. I just do like this. Now I have 3 empty sequences ready with 32 rows, and I press F2, still no sound, and I can't even see it. There you go. And F5 is the thing that makes you go back and forth between editing notes and values and editing transpose and sequence number. If you press F7, you get an overview of all the sequences in the tune. You can do like Control Enter, then you insert a blank one, and then you say repeat this one 4 times. And I can go over here, say repeat this one 4 times, and do like this. You can also copy sequences here, but let's just do it this way. Let's say I want a lead in this one, 9, A, B, then, oh, look at this. Now we have 0, 1. This means this is a null length, like this. So this is how my tune would look, and that would get out of sync as soon as it gets to here. So I say Alt-C, copy from null, scroll down. Oops, here we are again. Copy, and copy. F7, now I can see my tune is the same length in all sequences. Okay? Yeah. This first track editor, sequence editor, is the main area, and you switch back and forth between these three areas by using Control Tab. Then you make the cursor jump between these three. If you say Shift Tab, it goes backwards. So that's one way to do it. Another thing is you have Alt key for shortcuts, and the shortcuts are shown with a light gray behind one of the letters in the headlines of each table. So we have W, we have P, we have F, we have M for command because C is used for copy already. Same for short. Here it's D, and here we have I for instrument. So it's pretty easy to get around. So I say I, and I say W, and I say P, and I say F, and M, and I say D. That's how you do it. And as soon as you're inside one area, pressing Tab will cycle you between those tables. So that's another way of doing it. And Shift Tab, of course, will go the opposite way. So Control Tab to switch between the three main areas, 1, 2, 3, and Tab within one area goes around. If I say Alt 1, I'm going to be in channel 1, and if I press Tab now, it goes between the channels. Shift Tab goes backwards, and I can also use my cursor keys here. In the wavetables, you cannot get out of it by using the cursor keys. You'll have to tap to get over to pulse and tap to get to filter, but it's pretty convenient. Instead of finding F and P on your keyboard, if you just stand here and you want to go to pulse, you just hold down Shift and press Tab, blop, then you're back here and Shift, and then you're on wave. So that's pretty fast once you get used to it. But let's see how you work. There's plenty of ways of doing things. There's no rules. Timo just wanted to make an easy editor that makes it nice and lazy to do things. So that's his primary goal, I think, to make a cool editor that makes it a pleasant ride to make a SID music. And I think he's succeeded quite well. And he's even still developing and fixing things. So I think that's cool. Okay. That's more or less how the editor is structured. In the first area, the sequence area, where you have notes and such, if you press any key on your normal keyboard, you have two rows of octaves, and the lower part of your keyboard uses the octave numbers, which stands down here, which is 3 at the moment. So if I press, let's say, B on the bottom of my keyboard, I get a G3 because G corresponds to B on the keyboard. If I go up on the upper row of my keyboard or octaves, T will be the G in octave higher, so that would be the octave, base octave here, +1. So T is G4. Yes, it is. I'm currently writing instrument 0 when I press a key on my keyboard or note, and that's because over here you can see the instrument number is in light gray. If I press plus and minus on the numpad, then I can change which instrument I use by default. So if I press T now, then I get my instrument 8 because that's where it's light gray at the moment. If I get up here and I want to edit this instrument, then instead of finding instrument 0 over here and saying Alt I and go over here or Control Tab or whatever, I can just press Enter on top of this instrument. So blam, now it goes to this one directly. Okay? Now let's see, what else can we describe. If you press Tab in the instrument part, it jumps to the name and back. So that's all you can do here. Not really that much, but it's very efficient to tag or name your instruments with something a little bit logic. I think anyways. For all lookup tables and windows, all these areas with a lot of numbers, not the notes, but everything else has context help. So F12 will help you a lot. If you stand here and think, oh, what are these 8 bytes doing? Press F12 and you get a quick overview. You can find this online too, normal documentation, but when you're sitting at your computer and just want to do something, this is pretty neat. And the same information is used, if you press escape to get out of this. When you stand here and you go across the columns of bytes, look in the top row here. Here you have an explanation of the very same thing as when you press F12. So you can go back and forth, and it fades out after, I think, 3 or 5 seconds. Then it removes itself. Bloop. And then you have to move it across the bytes to get the text again, but it's pretty fast done. Let's take a check here. Fade out. And then I press Tab. No, nothing happens. It doesn't come when you tap, but if you go with the cursor, then you have it. So, okay, let's try and do something. I think we should try and do a basic drum, just to make this interesting, because getting around this editor with the keys is pretty simple stuff, I think. So a lot of people have asked me, how do I make drums? Well, I'm not sure that's the sound of it, how they ask, but I think we should try and do some basic drums, and you can always advance from that. There are no, what should I call it, no truth in how you make your drums. Your drums should fit your instruments should fit the tune. So I can tell you how I do drums, but it will just be a basic drum. You'll have to adjust the drum to the tune you're making, because drums has a sound or a tone, and you need to make sure that they have the same tone as your tune. So maybe my drum sounds best in G, and maybe you're making a tune in C, and then you'll have to adjust the values until the drums sound the best. This took me a while myself to realize. I just made basic drums in the start, and then suddenly, they actually sounded better if I just adjusted them just a slightly bit, one seminote up or down or something. But the only way to make cool instruments in SID music is to test again, and play around and try new ways, discover new ways of combining the numbers, and suddenly you're lucky and strike something that works. Keep it, save it. Over time you'll get a feeling of what works or what direction to go to get it working, but usually you just have to play and start out with some basic values that works okay, and then trying to make it better. Okay, first of all, let's try and make some kind of kick drum. I'm preparing this one. Usually my own pattern of instrument numbering is that 1 is my kick drum and 2 is my snare. Sometimes I have a hi-hat, maybe 2, and they could be 3 and 4, and maybe a tom-tom. I could place it at 5 or 6 or something. So that's what I'm going to do now. If I can find the time, I'll try to keep this below 20 or 30 minutes, so you don't fall asleep while you're watching this. And let's see. I'm in instrument 1, and I'll make a drum. C4 is a pretty high pitched sound for a drum, but it doesn't matter because I'll hard code the values inside the instrument, and I'll show you in a few seconds what I'm doing. So I'll make like a tuk 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 sound here. So I'll just make 4 drum kicks, and it repeats itself because my tune is now 4 segments. So, and this will definitely be a slow tune right now, because if you look at how the white line is moving, let's say now, tuk 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 tuk, that's simply too slow. So down here in the bottom we have the speed of the tune, and we have something called step. Step is for the editor, and it means how many rows should it jump down when you press a key. So when I press my Q, it jumps down 1 row at the moment, because that's what it says down here. If I want to change that, let's say 4 or 8, then you have to, on your numpad, you'll press the numbers from 1 to 9. So let's say I say 4, and I press here and press Q, then my cursor jumps down 4 rows, because step value is 4. I'll put it back at 1, but I'm just telling you because this is really efficient if you need to insert something in between these notes right now. The speed, which I started talking about, is chosen by holding down Control, and on the numpad you press minus and plus. So I'll put it down to speed 2, because that's the minimum speed you can play this with. As I recall it, and Timo can correct me on this one, we have a 0 frame, and then we have frame 1 and frame 2 for speed 2. If you say speed 5, then you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What I'm talking about here is the amount of frames before your cursor moves to the next row in your tune. So the slower you want the tune, the higher number you need, because it's a delay on how long time it should spend on each row before going on. I'm not sure if speed 2 is actually 2 frames or it's 3 frames, but Timo can clarify that for us, or you can look in the source code if you are good at assembler. I could do that too, but I'm lazy, so I'll let you do that. Yes, and we have now a pretty fast tune. We can't see it because I added a lot of frames or extras here. So actually right now I'm in the tune overview. I pressed F7. If I hold down Alt key and press cursor right, it goes to a new subtune. It's not lost. Look in the upper right here. It now says 00. If I go back, Alt left, now subtune 0. Subtune 0 is the main tune in your SID file. So if I go one to the right, I have a blank tune here with a different speed. I can select a speed for this tune if I want. And right here I can reuse, I can just write run, and then forget about the two other channels. And if I press F6 here or F5, then I have my tune in a length of the 32 rows I wanted. So right now I can just stay here, and this way we can see what we're doing. I can work with my pattern, if you think like a tracker, and then I can go back into my main tune and arrange how I want the patterns to work. This is very much what I do every time I compose a tune. I work in subtunes and combine X amount of sequences in a row that fits together in a loop, and I get that to work very good. And when I'm satisfied with this, I grab all these numbers and copy them over to my tune 0, my main tune, and then remove the subtunes afterwards. So it works very good. That's how I have composed every single tune for every offense demo so far I've been part of. Yes, okay, there's a kick drum we're going to do here. So I'll leave it playing so we can hear when something happens. And I'll go to the instrument. And the first thing we need to make an instrument in a SID, I don't know if you've done the SID composing before, but for those who haven't, you have attack and decay, sustain, release. That's how the sound evolves. You have attack, that's the amount of time the sound takes from 0 volume to maximum. And if you want a slow fading sound, you need a high attack value, so it will very slowly fade in. And if you have 0 value, it will go instantly full volume, so that will be good for a kick drum. And the next one is the maximum volume decay, and I'll say C is a nice volume right now. And as we're talking hex, each nibble here is from 0 to F, and that means we have an attack possible value of 0 to 15, and the same goes for attack, decay, sustain, release. So that's how ADSR is done on SID chips. Sustain is the volume the tone is hold. If you keep the key or the key on a keyboard down, this is the volume the sound will be at when you keep the voice on. And as soon as you release the tone, you go to the last nibble, and this is the amount of time it takes to fade out. So this is actually just like your attack. Attack is how long it takes to ease in, and release is ease out. Okay? So C for a hard drum, and perhaps fade out in 4. I don't know. Let's hear it when we are doing further. Forget these bytes right now. Just for this test right now. Let's just forget this and go to byte 6, which is the pulse table pointer. This one will go down here somewhere when you write which row you want it to jump to. You can write 04, then we'll jump to row 4 and start using these bytes. But I haven't told you anything about these, and I have done another tutorial about pulse table, and I'll do one about filter. So just forget about this right now. Write 88 here when you're doing drums, because the 8 is a row that doesn't exist. 80, we don't have that many rows. We have 3F, as you can see, so 40 is actually the highest number. So using the 8 number here is the most significant bit in this byte, triggers that this nibble will be a value from 0 to 15, which is a rough pulse width, and 8 is the middle value that gives you a very square thing, and that's what you need to make an oomph for your drum. And this one you can forget. And the last byte is very important, because this is your pointer to the row in your wavetable. And your wavetable is where you put in the waveforms. So right now I'll press tab and I'll say kick drum. Hopefully it will sound like that. And bear with me, but I'll say row 2, even though I haven't nothing in row 0 yet. That's because all my tunes always have 41, and then 7E and 00. This means no transpose, and use pulse form as a waveform. And 7E means end program. 7 for control value and E for end. That's how I remember it. If I had set 7F, it means jump to a certain column, and in this case you heard a sound. That's because up here I said kick drum, start in row 2, that's here, and then it says no transpose, and it says do nothing, and then it said jump to row 0, which is up here, so it turned on the pulse. So you actually heard this row playing even though it started down here. That's not what I want, so I say 7E to stop it. And now I don't have a sound. Okay, first part of doing an old style drum, you can of course edit and do your own version of this, is that you do some kind of noise. If I press F12 here, I get an explanation that tells me that the first byte is transpose values or loops, and the values from 0 to 5F is relative transpose. That means that any note you play inside your tune is added with this value, and this way you can change the note in the main tune if you want. And if you want to make a drum that can be used between notes, you will want the same noise and the same effect no matter what transpose the segment is played in. So you'll use values from 80 to DF, which is the brightest noise or tone you can transpose up for. I even think I'll start around C8 or something, because the high-pitched noise doesn't always sound as a cool drum, I think. And then again, 7E for loop to previous row. It says I'll just say end program, and 7F is loop to whatever row is specified after this 7F, and that's what we use byte 2 for. We have do nothing. That means repeat whatever was done in the previous row, and here we can see the different waveforms. They aren't listed here, but we have 11 and we have 21. We have in newer chip we have 31. In older chip we have 41 then, and 51, 61. They are not all officially, but they can be used on the newer chip, and I'm talking about the SID chip here. And you have 81 for noise, and that's what we need. So right now I'll just write a transpose hard-coded C8 for a bright sound, and 81 for noise. And the reason for this sounds very dark now is that after this first frame, these are played every frame, no matter what speed you are playing in. It will go down here and here and here, and there's no transpose, so it will immediately go down and play in C2 with noise on in these 3 rows. If I do like this, then you get the actual transpose value for the noise, but that's not really what I call a kick drum. So what I need is some kind of do to say it in slow motion, like do. Try and think you recorded your kick drum in 1000 frames per second, then you can kind of get the matrix kind of slow motion effect, so rotoscoping. So let's say we start in A2, A4, A6, A0, whatever, and we use pulse, and then we make it do a slope down, and let's start it slow, so it's do, and in the end it will go very fast. So first, the difference between these two notes in transpose would be small, so I'd say from A2 to A0, and we don't have to write anything here because it repeats whatever was last row if you have a 0 in this column. And maybe this one should go to 9C. This is 2 in difference, this is 4 in difference. This way it accelerates, and now we could make maybe 6 or 8. Well, that would be 9/4, and then we should end the sound. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, there's something of a drum, but I want to cut it off so it's a not that kind of sound. So I'll write 8 to get the most dark sound I can get, because I can't turn it off instantly right now. And then I'll put in a 10 waveform, which is the triangle, and it's very soft. So try and hear this. And I can even make it a little bit harder if I use some special values up here. I can't explain it right now because it will take too long, but restart is a way of resetting the SID chip that some of the cool guys invented, the cool guys who did these players. And I'll say if you put in 80 here, you trigger this hard restart, and then a waveform to use for hard restart I usually write 9, because it somehow clears out the SID chip, and I read it somewhere that it works, so I do it. And then you add a value here, perhaps 8, and this is a sustain release just like your ADSR, but this means that this value will be pumped into the ADSR before the actual note starts, and it somehow stops the previous tone harder, and that's why you have this hard restart name for it. So let's try and hear now. To be honest, I can't hear the difference right now. So anyway, this is a good way to do drums. You use these hard restart for it, I think. And I'll make some kind of kick drum, and I think I'll change this one to instrument 2 and instrument 2, because then we have That sounds great. And the reason for the second sound is now that I'm pointing to waveform 0, and go down here and say row 0. Well, wavetable 0, row 0, that gives me a pulse, and that's not what I want. I want a kick, a snare drum. So I make a new noise here, and I end my program here. And this row was 9, so I'll put it here, say wavetable 9, and say snare drum, hopefully. And now here. Wow. I definitely need to turn off my noise to get that effect. Not really what I had in my mind. I hope you can agree this is very boring, and I have no release on this one, so it has no way of fading out the snare drum. And I forgot my hard restart. Somebody ought to tell me. That's a really nice snare. Not. What I do here is that now I want to make that kind of slam that you make on the snare drum, and it's like some. It has a bit hard to explain, but usually I use a more bright pulse value than my kick drum, which is pretty dark. So I think, let's say 8 AE and 41 for pulse, and perhaps go very fast down because it's a slam on this thing. So 8.6 perhaps 41. It has some more slam to it than before, maybe 4 here. Ah, that's too high. Here, now, because they're too close, now you get that do kind of effect, more tom-tom-like. Now if I do like this, it goes some disco drum kind of. That's how they were built, the disco drums. So if you want a real slam, you need to make a bigger step between these two, and force the pulse to really snap from one tone to another. And here I want to reintroduce my noise, but like a snare drum. Nah, I want it to work. I want it to be alive. So I think I'll add another pulse after this noise, and perhaps not turn it on. No. Notice the 1 and 0 in this last row. This means gate on, turn on the sound, and this means initialize the release phase. So don't turn it on again. It will give you some funny effects. You can do it in a controlled way if you want, but don't do it as a beginner. It can give you a lot of problems. Okay, now it stops in this row, which is a bright pulse, and bloom. That's not what I want. I want it to loop, so I say 7F. And what row do I want to loop to? Well, I need to loop to a row where I have turned off the gate. Otherwise it will turn on again. So if I say B, then I get an echo, but that's not what I want. I want this. And I think the release is too long. That's a sort of a drum. Let me see, what can I do about this? Well, this works, sort of. Anyways, I would say fiddle around, try some different numbers. I change my drums all the time. In the beginning I always copied from my old tunes, but then I started to experiment and found out that it was actually easier to play around with the numbers, following these basic steps, and then fine-tuning my drums for the final tune when I have done it. So make some default drums, compose your tune, and then adjust your drums so they fit even better into the tune. Okay? I think I'll do a quick hi-hat perhaps. Hi-hat, yeah, why not? Let's see, we'll need some high-pitched noise, and I'll probably need to turn it off immediately so it's a kind of thing. And I end my wave program here, and it's 11, so I'll say, let's try and just copy what we have for the other drum, just to see what happens. I don't need the pulse value, but I'm just copying to be quick. Hi-hat. And I can go over here, and it could be funny to just say, oh well, that didn't sound like a hi-hat in my ears. That sounds like a train or something. What you need to do is shorten the sound as much as possible, and I would say get down to around 2 in volume for the decay part, and perhaps shorten the sound itself, maybe 2. See? But normally a hi-hat doesn't sound the same all the time unless it's a electronic hi-hat. So if we remove this hard-coded absolute value for transposing and say we let the notes decide, then we have a problem here. We need to go to 7. Now we could start to play around with these numbers. Maybe make one of them 6, just to see what happens. Maybe a little bit too far away from each other, but anyway. What am I doing here? There we go. Maybe like this, where it's half an octave instead of a full octave. That might be more trustworthy. Now that sounds like a closed hi-hat to me. What about an open hi-hat? I would say 2, maybe 2. I'll just copy this first and say let's make this one. And a new one. Let's say we can reuse that one. And then let's make a 4. Let's see, now I'll play around with these numbers until I get a sound that sounds a little bit like a hi-hat that is open. That actually works. I think my big drum, kick drum is a little bit too slow, so I'll remove one of these steps. That could do. And then I could go over here and maybe make some kind of bass sound. Now I have my tune here, and I used 4 in my previous main tune, so I'll make 4 again, so I can reuse that. And maybe do some kind of bass sound. Let's say I make a number 8 for a bass, and let's see, I'll just do some quick numbers here. And well, I have bass already in my pulse already, but I think I'll make a new one. Let's see here. Say 0 on my bass. I need to hurry up. 33 minutes done. This will be quick now. And let's say I took it. Maybe. Can't hear anything. Let's go in and make some kind of pulse. And instead of 8, I'll write 8-4. See what happens. That's boring. Let's make a 4-1 and then maybe turn it off. This means that if I point at this wavetable, turn it on, keep it on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever frames, and turn it off. And then perhaps turn it off very fast, so I make my release very small. Interesting. That works. Now I have my basic loop here. Now I'll go back to my previous here where I have a more complete song. And if I press Shift F2, and if I press F2, it just starts from the start. If I press backspace, I can say start from here, and then I can press F1. Or I can say Shift F1. The real strength in this editor, which is based on the principles from your Zoho editor, is that when I say F2 here, and I can use scroll lock to decide if I want to follow, but Shift F2, then I can press scroll lock. Oh, here I decide that, well, I want to change this one. Now look what I can do with this tune. I can scroll back, and I can scroll all the way through the tune. Just find one other editor on Amiga or 64 that can do this. This is why I prefer CheeseCutter above anything else. This way of editing your music is genius. Thank you, Timo. Thank you for doing this. I know you didn't invent this idea, but thank you for redoing it. Yes, please. I think once you have tried to compose with this editor and find out how this works, you'll really see the benefits instead of a single pattern that flips every time it turns around. So, okay. Enough advertising here. I have my bass. I go F7. I see my tracks, my sequence, and I think I'll make a 2. And it's sequence 2, and I want a copy of my drums here. So I say copy from sequence 1. Blam. And here in the end of this tune, and I press backspace here to get blue, so I can start here because I want to hear this part a lot now. I would like to have some kind of snare thing here. So kind of ending the track, and now it's a little trick here. We have this command row here, and values from A, B, C, and D, write them like this. The second nibble is the actual value, so this is the trigger, and this is attack, decay, sustain, and release. And if you paid attention to my bass here, I didn't put in a sustain. That's on purpose, because now I have my volume all in decay, and that means if I use B values, I can set this value and overrule whatever is in my bass instrument. My drum instrument, my snare here. So when I go over here and I use B all the way, and this only works for the note you're doing it on, so and forward till the next note, so then it's reset again. So you'll have to add it every row where you want to change your volume. You should also note this adds an extra byte in your tune, so if you do this for every row, perhaps you need to make an instrument instead, because changing an instrument also adds a single byte, but you can decide later. Now let's say I want to start at volume 2, 4, 6, 8, A, and I know the default value is C already, so I actually don't need this one. So let's try and hear how this works. Remember, I placed a blue line up here with my backspace. This means I can start exactly here and hear how this goes. Let's see. I think that's pretty nice, at least for fun. I think my bass is a bit boring right now because it's just staying at this 4 value. There's no program. So instead of explaining how a program works, just see what I do. I point at row 1 in the pulse program, go down here. No, I don't. I actually don't write anything. I just go to the pulse program here and I say, what do I do? I say 40 and I say C and I say 20, 20 and I say 4, 4 and I say FF and I say jump to row 1, 1 I said. That's a 1. And to activate this one, there's a little trick. If you write 0 in your pulse and your filter here, it will continue on whatever row it's working on down here. So this one doesn't do anything for a start, but when I go into my tune here and say this is my bass, then I can say my first bass here is triggered to start on this row in the program. So a bass command here is 40 and I want to start in row 1, so I just say 41, and then the pulse program here will continue working all the way down over this segment. Try and hear how it sounds now. Notice the bass. It's more live. I can do it even. Oh, if I want to make it even more clear what I'm doing, I can make a 5, 5, 5, where I copy number 4, and then I remove this initializing. Then I have a bash that can work all the way through the tune. A little feature when you're doing this and trying to figure out where the numbers are going, you can press Control F9, then up here there will come some debug information that goes directly into the SID. And here you can see the pulse values working. So now I can change these. Okay, that's how you can do drums. And a little test on pulse table. You can watch my other tutorial about pulse tables. I'll add some filters and stuff in some other tutorials. So yeah, well, quick filter here, just some basic values. Let's try 9 F2. Let's say 4. This one will count for 40, 40. Count up, count down. Stay, loop. This very much similar to how the Pulse program works, but I'll make a separate one about filters because there's much more to it than this. So now I've made a filter starting in row 1, and I can activate filters just like I can do with my Pulse here. It just needs to be 61. So I'll do that in this row because I don't use it right now. So just like this. This is not what you do normally, but I just need to fire this command at the same time as this pulse value, so that's why I do it here, because if I do it in this one, row 1, channel 1, then it repeats here, and I don't want to reset it. So let's hear how it does, and this will be the last, and I'm ending SCASIX signing off this tutorial. Have fun. Okay, that's it. Have fun, guys.